This video is sponsored by Squarespace. To learn more about Squarespace and to get access to a special offer, stick around until the end of the video. So in a recent video, I discussed how I've been using goblet curls to build bigger biceps and how for me, they've been this fantastic revelation, almost like miracle grow, causing lots of growth, not only in the biceps, but also the traps, and also building more strength endurance, stronger tendons that actually translate to greater performance. A lot of you responded to that video really well. It did really well, and I had loads of comments from people saying that they tried this method and that it really worked for them. I even found a discussion on Reddit where people were saying they tried it and they thought it worked really well. That, of course, then led to more comments from people asking what they could do for their other body parts that would have a similar benefit. And one of the areas that people wanted to know about the most was the pecs. Now, those of you who've been watching for a long time will know that I have an answer for this, and that's high repetition push-ups. I made a video on it ages ago, works in just the same way. If you're doing push-ups with, 100, 150 repetitions, you're gonna build massive pecs. It's worked for prisoners, it's worked for athletes. Loads and loads of people have attested to the power of this method. Problem is, everybody hates training like this. Doing high rep push-ups is grueling, it gets you sweaty and hot, and if you're someone who's a little bit shy of cardio, this is so cardio heavy. With that in mind then, I want to propose another option, that's bodyweight dips. These work in a very similar way, but we don't need quite such massive rep ranges. It's more enjoyable and approachable for most people. So I've got my dip bars, I'm going to just bosh out 30 in one go, trying to maintain as much tension on the pecs all the way throughout as possible. It looks like this. As you're doing your dips, you can choose whether you want to focus more on the pecs or on the triceps. Lean forward slightly more and keep your elbows stacked over the wrists to make this more of a workout for the pecs and shoulders, and widen that grip too. To hit the triceps more, try keeping your body in a more upright posture. Whatever you do, you should aim to work towards being able to lower your elbows to at least 90 degrees, and try not to have them flare out to the sides outside of the bars too much. But do what's comfortable and don't overthink it. This is a relatively safe movement, but if you're not used to it, it can feel awkward. Just go with what works for you. I actually lost count there, but you get the idea. For me personally, I tend to do 2 to 3 sets of these dips, and I keep my rest times relatively short, 30 to 60 seconds. This just further increases that build-up and allows me to get greater results in shorter time. Again, play around with it, but just try it before you knock it. Slow down the movement at first if you need to refine it. But what I'm actually recommending is that once you're able to, you want to maintain this more rapid cadence. We're focusing more on the concentric portion of the movement, the upwards portion where the pecs shorten. This not only reduces the muscle damage and recovery cost, but it also has the added bonus of making the movement more explosive. This increases the involvement of the faster, thicker muscle fibres and builds more explosive power that translates to better performance. So there's a few reasons that things like these dips and these goblet curls work so well. There's a few different types of secret sauce going on here. The first is the excellent stimulus to fatigue ratio. That is to say that because you're focusing more on the concentric portion of the movement, as in the pushing, the shortening of the muscle, and then you're more quickly doing the lengthening portion, this means you minimize muscle damage, meaning that you can actually do this more frequently. So this kind of training I use in high frequency, most workouts every other day maybe, and that is, well, for me it's like miracle growth for the muscles, whilst also not leaving me exhausted and injured and ill. At the same time, this kind of training, when you're going high repetition but maintaining that tension on the muscle, it pulls blood in the muscle. The blood is shuttled to the muscle to do the work, but then it can't get out as easily because that contraction is maintaining. So that's what creates that feeling of pump. And this has a bunch of great benefits. It creates metabolic stress, meaning you're also building up lots of metabolites, hormones that trigger protein synthesis and growth. It's one of the main triggers for hypertrophy. And whilst a lot of people say, oh, metabolic stress is useless, it's not. It really does work. That's why these high repetition bodyweight exercises work. And if you have any doubts, if you're feeling a little bit cynical about it, well then I just invite you to try one of these and see for yourself how transformative it can actually be. At the same time, this kind of works like occlusion training because the blood is going there and it can't get out. It's building up, creating that feeling of pump. This actually can on its own trigger some hypertrophy. But then on top of that, it's also great for angiogenesis. It encourages the formation of new blood vessels, supplying the muscles with more blood, which we know correlates positively with increased satellite cells, myonuclei, and protein synthesis. At the same time, it supplies the tendons, strengthens the tendons. They have a lower blood supply, so this is great for building stronger tendons. And it even encourages the activation of more fast twitch muscle fibres. Because you have less oxygen getting there, because you're creating this hypoxia, that therefore means that you're going to increase the activation of the fast twitch muscle fibres, the stronger, more powerful muscle fibres, because they're anaerobic. They don't need oxygen as much to operate compared with the slower twitch muscle fibres. So for a bunch of reasons, this actually works surprisingly well, even in the absence of a really heavy weight. And I recognise, of course, that a lot of people aren't going to be able to just go over and do 30 dips, but either do 10 or 15 as long as you're feeling that pump, or if you lightly put your feet on the ground. This is a great way to make movement slightly easier whilst focusing more on that tension whilst you're performing those high repetitions. This also slightly reduces the amount of stability you need, making this a safer starting point, and then you can gradually remove those feet. And of course, you can also do a drop set where you remove the feet, and as soon as you start to notice your form breakdown, introduce the feet again. You can actually see already that my pecs are now looking pumped, a bit more swollen. Great to do before a video shoot, by the way. And it's a functional movement. Because you're building strength endurance, not just max strength, this means that any activity where you need to exert pec strength for a continuous period of time is going to benefit. Because as I've said so often on this channel, you don't often use max strength once in most real world settings. You tend to use a bit of your strength, but for an extended period of time. This is going to build you that cardiovascular fitness, the blood supply to the muscles, the movement patterns, the tendon strength to be able to support all that. At the same time, the dip itself is an excellent and underrated exercise. It actually involves quite a lot of scapular control, trap engagement, because you're going to be trying to keep the traps nicely depressed. We don't want you squatting, dipping down and looking like that. Keeping those traps nicely depressed, which can actually undo an awful lot of bad posture we get from exercises, especially if you're doing lots of shrugs and nothing to counterbalance that. At the same time, you're going to be building shoulder stability, which is important for everything from hand balancing to throwing to carrying to overhead pressing. And this is a very functional pattern, a movement that we use when climbing over something. We push ourselves up with this kind of vertical downwards pushing movement. And the dips are one of the only exercises that allow you to train that. As well as climbing up onto things, it's also obviously useful for vaulting. It's foundational for a lot of advanced calisthenic skills, that downwards push, especially if you're lowering yourself, for example, out of a handstand. And of course, that downwards pushing motion is half of a muscle up. But here's the thing, I'm not telling you to only train with these shorter range of motion exercises. Rather, I'm telling you that you should be doing this as well. And actually, this is where my personal training has really transformed lately. So lots of you in the comments have said, Adam, you're looking bigger at the moment. You know, what's your secret? And the answer is that I've actually kind of divided my training more into two parts. I'm doing less intense workouts for hypertrophy. Instead of doing more HIIT style training where I batter my body and then allow it to recover, instead I'm doing higher frequency, higher volume, but lower intensity with these high rep range exercises. It was actually what I used to always do when I was younger. And what this does, it allows me to build the muscle, build the strength endurance, get that kind of base of strength. And then on top of that, I have far more energy and time to practice my skills, my mobility, my full range of motion. And so that is like a killer combination. So of course, if you want to do proper full range of motion dips, you know, I mean, this is probably overdoing it. You can round the top of your back, protract your scapula, keep your chest over the bars, and then lock out at the top. Get a nice stretch down there at the bottom of the movement as well. Now, what you can always do is combine these within a single set as well. So for example, you can do a few of those nice controlled full range of motion dips at the start. And then once you feel yourself start to tire out, switch to the lighter, slightly more upright ones with less lockout and a faster cadence. And by doing this, you're getting the benefits of that control, that full range of motion, and at the same time, the benefits of the high repetition. You can even start to end by just slowing down and doing a couple of really deep stretches. By the way, these kinds of technical drop sets, I call them Gauntlet sets, are what form the foundation of my functional training programs. My Super Functional Training 2.0, which is available in the description down below, and it's on discount just for a little tiny bit longer until the end of February. So if you're interested in that, check it out. It's basically a training program that's designed around these kinds of movements that's intended to build not only strength, but also every other aspect of performance. So endurance, mobility, even brain function, agility, all that stuff all at once. If that sounds interesting, then yeah, check it out.
Otherwise, let's continue. Obviously, there are lots of more technical versions of the dip, lots of harder progressions that you can use if you want to. One of the best ones, of course, is ring dips. These massively increase the amount of instability, making it a much harder challenge for your grip, for your shoulders, and just all round. You can also get a far deeper stretch on the pecs if you want to. Then you've got movements like, bent arm planche or just planche push-ups if you're that way inclined. Obviously, this is extremely advanced, but there's nothing, again, to stop you from combining those with the high repetition dips to get the best of both worlds. And then, of course, you can just do mobility stretches at the end to make sure you've still got all of that mobility and you're not going to develop a more puffy and hunched up posture. Oh yeah, and obviously there's also weighted dips. It's about the most obvious one out there. And I'd also like to take a moment to shout out this piece of training equipment, the dip bar. Obviously you can do dips literally anywhere. You can do them at the gym. Almost every gym's got dip bars. You can also do them at home using 2 chairs, or the corner unit in your kitchen is a classic. You can even do it outside a lot of the time if you find a usefully shaped tree with the right branches. So dips are great, but if you want to be able to do them literally anywhere, then a dip bar or a set of dip bars is just one of the very best tools you can buy. It's affordable, it's actually relatively easy to store. We have no space in our house. I store these flush against the wall right behind the pushchair in the kitchen, which I'm sure my wife loves. She's endlessly patient. And then I just get them out and bring them into the living room when I want to use them. And they're not just good for dips, they're also good for bodyweight rows. They're good for various types of chin-up. I do assisted one-armed chin-up progressions on them. You can do front levers and front lever progressions on them. You can do all sorts of excellent stuff using dip bars, and they actually fill a gap that a lot of people have in their training. Those of you wondering, what the equivalent of this movement is for the lats, well, the answer is to do bodyweight rows. I do high repetition bodyweight rows, and then when I'm gassed out and finished with those, I switch immediately to scapular rows, just to really make sure I've got that nice scapular retraction and to fix various postural issues that I've developed over time. But these, if you've only got a little bit of money to spend on some training equipment, I highly recommend considering dip bars as a strong contender for the best bang for your buck. So let me know what you think, guys. Have I sold you on high repetition dips? Is there anything similar that you do for your pecs? And which muscle group would you like me to cover next using this kind of training? Let me know in the comments down below. Either way, guys, thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. By the way, guys, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Now, if you've been living entirely under a rock for the last several years, then I suppose it's theoretically possible you wouldn't know that Squarespace is a website building platform. It makes it extremely easy for anybody to get a website up and running in a matter of literal minutes and with no coding skills required. It makes it that simple. You can either choose a template, one of the many ready-made beautiful modern templates, and then customize it to your heart's content, or you can use their new AI tools to build a bespoke design from scratch with, like I say, barely any effort required. From there, you can add as many features as you like. It has pretty much everything you could possibly want, from e-commerce solutions to beautiful formatting and publishing tools to an integrated commenting system with threaded comments, replies, and likes. Client scheduling if you want to book clients and earn money through your site that way. Search engine optimization tools so that you can get your site to the top of Google so that more people find it. Whether you're a hobbyist starting out and want to express yourself online, or whether you're building a serious business online, Squarespace has got you covered. And in fact, it's used by many of the biggest brands on the web already. So if you want to check it out, go to squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Bioneer and you get 10% off your first domain or website. I genuinely highly recommend Squarespace. It's a fantastic tool, so yeah, check it out. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Bye for now.